The Cold Hard Truth now has your Premier access with Premier Panton.
Hello everyone, this is Wayne Panton. Come and join me on Cayman Mile Road's Premier Access every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. for a frank and open Q&A session. I'm here to answer your questions about the issues that concern you the most. Tune into YouTube and Facebook Live on Wednesday. We will see you there.
Full transparency, answering your questions, down to earth, accountable, and accessible to who matters. You. Don't miss Premier Access on The Cold Hard Truth, spilling the tea like no one else.
All right, good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of Premier Access, brought to you by Cayman Mile Road, right here on 89.1 FM, Bobo, and of course, live with our listeners on YouTube and Facebook. So good evening to everyone. We do have the Premier. He's ready to go. So get your questions ready. Whatever you've got for him, bring it on. So good evening, Premier Panton.
Good evening, Sandra. What a pleasure it is again to be able to join you.
Yes, I feel like it's been a little while.
Yeah, it feels like that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's what happens when you have been through about a COVID and that type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, everything is good.
So, why don't we start there since you mentioned it? How was it? I think you must have done okay. I didn't hear of any serious complaints.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I mean, I was not sick really. I've had four vaccinations, so I've had both boosters,
right.
and I was fine. I had a more or less a sinus issue. It was a little bit miserable at times when your nose is sort of burning, and occasionally, going in between periods of congestion and no congestion. But other than that, I didn't feel sick. I didn't have aches and pains. I didn't have any real fever to speak of. So I put it down to being vaccinated, to the with both boosters. So very, very happy. Don't regret doing that at all. And I recommend it to everybody because even today still, we have people who are getting sick. And they are, some people are getting very sick, and
Yes.
it is very much a concern. I mean, we have, I think, somewhere in the region of 9 or 10 people in hospital at the moment. It's been that way on and off, give or take a few, for a period of weeks and weeks now. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed is that because we have a really high vaccination rate, we have like about 20% of those people are unvaccinated. The rest are people who have been vaccinated but only have had 2 shots, so they've never done the boosters. And I think that's obviously a mistake. I think people should keep up to date with the boosters because I certainly feel that it absolutely helped me.
Right. Well, I keep knocking on wood because I've yet to catch the COVID. So,
Yeah.
but I've had a really bad cold with some people who had both, so that they thought the cold at times was worse than COVID. But yeah, we know that the U.S. is certainly pushing for the next batch of vaccines, hopefully in September or so, to have some additional tweaks for the new BA.5 variant. So, do you know if the UK is on that same track, where we'll be getting a shipment soon that will be available that has, some additional protection against the latest variants that have been floating around?
To be honest, I have not had a specific update on that at the moment. The CMO is off on vacation. She's, I think, back either later this week or the beginning of next week. So we'll probably get an update through the minister, my colleague, Minister Turner. We'll probably get an update via the CMO and her at that point. But I believe the answer is yes. I know the UK is still committed to providing us with vaccines as necessary, and so I think it will be available. You
Right.
know, but and I do think it is still necessary for us. You know, we are going to get to a point where, and probably, it may not be too long from now either, where
Mm-hmm.
everybody stops sort of putting in place mandatory vaccine requirements. And we've already lifted the testing requirements. Unless something drastically changes in terms of a new variant of concern, which may have a significant uptick in sickness and its ability to spread. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
unless that happens, we'll probably be moving along to the position of not requiring mandatory vaccination for visitors. And,
Mm-hmm.
and that means for me, and for the safety of our country and our people, that means we should be making sure that we're as vaccinated as we can be and up to date with our vaccines.
Okay. And of course, the next thing that's on the headlines in terms of health concerns that everyone is watching is monkeypox. I think there's at least 3 or 4 states in the United States of America that have already declared state of emergencies. I know that California is one as it relates to that. We have not yet had a confirmed case. I know that we had a case that was being tested, but did we ever get any results on that? I'm guessing it was not positive because we probably should have heard
That
by
was
now.
negative. That turned out to be chickenpox.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move on, Sandra, if you would indulge me for a moment, I
Mhm.
really wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge that we have lost some very significant women, people generally, but obviously, I'm thinking of three significant women in our community lately. We've lost Miss Isley Conley, um,
Mhm.
a woman who had committed the majority of her working life to teaching in the Cayman Islands,
Mhm.
and she was the wife of um, Mr. Conley, our one of our national heroes. Um, also, we also lost Miss Gwen Bush from Bodden Town fairly recently, and then even more recently, we had the very tragic situation of the loss of another former teacher, um, Mrs. Garcia. Um, and was originally from East End.
Mhm.
I wanted to take the opportunity to extend condolences to all of their families and just to acknowledge them as very significant women in our communities, and particularly on the eastern side. Although I know the people from the sister islands will chide me if I don't acknowledge that Miss Isley originally came from Cayman Brac. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I I thought it was very appropriate to be able to mention those strong, inspirational Caymanian women that had contributed so much to our country. And Mrs. Garcia more recently, she was just an absolutely lovely person. Um, I remember her. She was teaching while I was in the Cayman Islands High School, and in fact, her husband, um, Mr. Garcia, was one of my teachers. He was a history teacher, so I've been trying to get on to the family to be able to go and visit him, but it was very, very, very tragic situation. Um, with a very happy event being the wedding of their daughter, and to have it all end so tragically on the same day was, um, it's just really truly awful. And I know our hearts and thoughts go to all the families that were impacted by that, and the whole country.
Mhm. Mhm. Very true. I did notice I was driving through South Sound earlier today, and I noticed that the almond tree there, which I think has been the site of a couple really bad accidents, there's now some reflectors on that tree. And so I did reach out to the NRA, and they said that on your instructions, they'd actually put the reflectors, at your request, I suppose, they put the reflectors on the tree, but they had a more permanent solution that was going to be updated hopefully by tomorrow. So, hopefully that will help that particular tree, especially at night, to stand out a little bit more. But, it's just it was just such a tragic situation, and I know that traffic in that area can be at night. You just have to be so incredibly careful because the roads are very, very narrow. I had someone
Yeah.
ask earlier whether or not there might be some consideration to reducing the speed a bit more. Of course, if someone is lawless, they're not going to be paying that any attention. But if that is a situation that might assist, I don't know if you're in talks with the NRA about any potential solutions. Some other people on our program on Monday said maybe making part of it a one-way street. Again, I don't know if any of those things would help substantially, but some things to think about, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there have been discussions about doing something with the tree. The owners of the property, I understand, didn't want the tree to be removed. I certainly can understand their view on that, but one thing was certain is that the area is, because of the size of the tree and the canopy, it was a
Hmm.
dark area and there's not a lot of light. And I thought it was absolutely necessary to put the reflectors on the tree so that anyone that was passing by um, would actually be conscious of the tree being there.
Hmm.
So I did ask them to put those reflectors on. Um, I hadn't actually got by. I had planned to drive by there tonight to see if they were on. So thank you for confirming that they're on there.
Yeah, they stood out. They got some big ones on there now. So, but again, I think those are sort of temporary until the next day or so. So, good evening to everyone. Good morning. Good evening to Diamond Princess. We've got Melita who's joining us. She said, "Sandy, I'm glad you've got your voice back. It's getting there, almost back to 100%." Good evening to Debbie. Debbie says, "Glad to know that the premier is feeling better. Cannot keep a good man down." So,
Thank you,
very,
Debbie.
very good.
I'm 120%.
Yes. So times like this, though, I got to tell you, Premier, I felt like, oh, I haven't gotten so much sleep in the last probably week and a half. When you're not feeling well, your body kind of forces you to get the sleep and to go to bed a little bit earlier and that sort of thing. So I'm kicking off. I don't know if you heard this or not. My 50 by 50 plan, which is to lose 50 pounds by the time I'm 50. So that gives me a little bit over a year. And there's a lot that has to happen for that to really go off successfully, including some dietary changes, getting back on the whole exercise wheel, and just making some good positive lifestyle changes. But those are my two primary ones that I know I need to focus on. Now, the last time I saw you, you were silently working on some changes yourself in terms of your diet. How has that been going for you?
Well, let's just say I have fallen victim to uh, the reality versus aspiration situation that a lot of people do.
Mhm.
I guess you find yourself under stress and uh,
Mhm.
busy, and you don't eat all day, and then you end up eating in the evening. So I have been good at times, but not so good at other times. But I want to tell you that you, I think I will join you if you need any company. I will join you. I will get
Yes.
I'll get on that with you because I firmly believe
Yeah.
that what we do need in the country is um, a greater focus on health. I think the
Mhm.
older you get, the more you realize that health really is wealth. And
Mhm. Absolutely.
there are a lot of people in the world who, for all the money they may have had, find that they can't buy health, and
Mm.
none of it matters if you don't have your health. I think
Yes.
overall for the country, it's a very positive thing, and I have the support of my minister for health and wellness, in this sort of approach. And it's not just you know a question of government having to or being able to spend less money on the health of people. Um, at the end of the day, we're talking about real people, real life,
Mhm.
and it means that we have people who are healthier, are able to be more involved with their families. We have
Mhm.
stronger communities, so it's a very positive thing, and it's something that I want us to continue to push, and I've got to really commit to it, stress or not.
Well, I'm motivated. I went on Saturday and I did a full battery of tests at Health City, including the entire heart health package,
Yeah.
as well as the women's package. So, I've gotten the thumbs up, everything. The A1C numbers, I need to bring those down. And of course, with weight loss, those are the numbers that would be coming down as well. And those are sugar levels, which are really important. So, I'm 100% committed. I am looking for people who want to join with me. I had someone call me earlier and she said, she's involved in the dementia organization. And she said that, exercise and good eating habits are also important to starve off that particular disease as well. I mean, it helps with so many different things that it's just unbelievable.
Absolutely.
So, anyone who wants to join on this journey, her and I have committed that we will find time to try to walk together, get some exercise in. I know during the COVID pandemic on Fridays, we were doing exercise sessions here in the morning, and they were getting into it and they were joining. We had a virtual
Yeah.
session with a personal trainer joining in. And so we got to kickstart those things again. And, I hope that we can all participate at that level. So if you're in, I'm going to hold you to it because
I
I'm trying
will.
to.
I will join you. I'll commit.
Okay.
I remember two significant events. One was Hurricane Ivan, and we were obviously it wasn't something that we planned. We didn't have any electricity for some time after that, um, and we spent time enjoying the night sky, remembering what the Milky Way looked like,
Hmm.
and really importantly, talking with our neighbors.
Absolutely.
Speaking to people face to face and just sharing that common bond of humanity. Um, and of course, something similar, not exactly the same, and obviously for different reasons, but something similar happened with with COVID and the lockdown scenario, where you weren't obviously gathering in groups, but people were out exercising and passing each other, and
Hmm.
you know people spent more in a way, even though you couldn't physically be there, they spent time with each other more. And I do think that we've got to figure out ways of doing that, even in the normal world that we have, without having to be forced into doing it.
Absolutely. Sanya, good evening. Good evening to Miss Morna. We've got Emma here. Lots of ladies in the house. Any men watching us? Sanya says, "Good evening, Sandy. Your voice is back. It's almost there. It's not quite 100%, but
Good evening, Sonia.
I think by next week we should hopefully be good to go. So I'm going to continue taking my little meds that I've found to be extremely helpful, but they make me sleepy. So if I take those, I definitely am in bed for 10:30. Melita, sorry, says you're not alone, Premier. I've been off of beef and pork for over a year now. More than ever, I'm craving my traditional chili dish, which I pass on my two children. So, yeah, Melita, we can have certain things in moderation. So, it's good that you've been able to give up beef and pork. Sorry for over a year, but most of us don't necessarily have to give up something completely. It's about maybe once a week or maybe once a month, or but we can cut back substantially.
The one thing we
So,
should give up is smoking and drinking excessively. Smoking in
absolutely,
particular. Um,
yeah.
I hope I don't. I hope I don't embarrass him, but I mean, earlier this year, um, it was a real. And I mentioned this before on the show, but it was a real shock for us. Um, we almost lost my younger brother, uh,
Hmm.
and he ended up. He had a heart attack, very serious heart attack, he ended up having a quadruple bypass, and
Mm,
you know he I call him a closet smoker. He wasn't someone that smoked out in the open,
mhm,
but he would sort of smoke socially with his friends and whatnot. And um, it's everybody that I know who has been a real long-term smoker typically has had some issues. And I even had because of our proximity and age, and obviously being brothers, the health team were very keen to make sure that I was personally okay in that respect
mhm,
as well. So I ended up having an angiogram, uh,
mhm,
where they completely checked out my arteries, and thankfully they were all clear and I had no blockages. Um, but the reality is, there are certain risk factors. Smoking and drinking are very high risk factors.
mhm,
Obviously, being overweight is a risk factor as
mhm.
well.
Yep.
So I know what my challenge is, and I want to try to make sure that, you know 5 years from now I don't have an issue with that. I owe it to my family, my friends, and I guess at this point I owe it to the office to make sure that I remain healthy. So I'm
Mhm.
going to join you, Sandra, and I'm
Okay.
challenging everybody in the country to join. And maybe not 50 by 50 or anything like that. I can't, obviously I'm beyond the 50, but I can, in age, but I can certainly,
You can still, yeah, you can still aim
yeah,
for
I'll
25
have
pound,
more
50
time frame and
pound.
try to get it done quicker.
Yes. So I'm giving myself a whole year, which I feel like is plenty time,
Yeah.
folks. So if anybody else is interested, I'm actually meeting with Shamari hopefully tomorrow to try to work out some of the details. But we're going to have a personal trainer, a nutritionist, and some other regulars that are going to be on the program every once in a while. And every 3 months, the idea is to go back and have all the numbers checked to see if what we're doing is actually working. So as of next week, the physical part of I've already started making improvements in the diet. And as of next week, the physical part should kick off. I'm just trying to get over this cold before I put any sort of strain on myself. But I think what we need to do, Premier, in order to keep ourselves accountable, we have to have goals. We need to have measurable goals that can actually be achievable. So my first goal for this week has been to increase my water intake. And as much as possible, about 95%, eliminate anything else other than tea. So I'll
Thanks
have
for the
tea.
reminder.
I got mine right here too. Other than tea, try not to drink anything else. So that's where we're at, folks. So if you're going to be joining us on this journey, give up all the sweet drinks. And when I say sweet drinks, I mean not just sodas. They're a killer, but even the fruit juices. The fruit juices are really no better than. I'm surprised at how many people think, oh, orange juice is great. It's really not great. If you want orange juice, go eat an orange, because that's healthy for you. But give up all these juices that have been added and loaded down with so much sugar. And let's just try to stick with water. So that's our goal for the first week. But I'm going to actually sit down and work out a bona fide plan from 1 week to the next. And I'm going to share that with everyone so that we can kind of do this together. So Melita says, she says, that's a lie, Premier. We got tired of smothering each other in relation to COVID. Ingrid, good evening. Debbie, we're just getting started, so we can't boast about any weight losses yet. Bonnie is here. Amjad is here tonight. He says that I'm glad that you're fine and well, Mr. Panton. Mr. Tommy's joining us from, Mr. Tommy's at the Bahamas. Remind me which of the beautiful islands you're from. Andrea says, good night, Sandy and the Honorable Premier Panton. Kevin, hello, Kevin. Kevin has been doing the keto and intermittent fasting since June the 13th. And over the last 3 weeks, he has lost 12.5 pounds. Very
Well,
good.
you go, Kevin. You've got a head start on us now. Then
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, I can't do the intermittent fasting because I am watching my A1C levels. I've been told that for me, I've got to do 6 smaller meals per day and definitely no fasting, because fasting actually impacts your blood sugar level. So this is why it's a good idea to go in and speak to your physician and know specifically for yourself what you're looking at. So Amjad says the failure of the Minister Kenneth Bryan solution to the bus system, the bus drivers not going their route and the bus system not working. All drivers on work permits from Jamaica should replace with Caymanian. So, do we know anything? I know that the minister was, and of course, you can't really speak for him, but I know he was off island working on looking at some possible future solutions. But let's be very clear, Amjad, and I want to say this for everyone's benefit, is the problems that you may be discussing, and I don't know how accurate all of that is, but these are not things that were just created under the PAC administration, who's been in a little bit over a year. They've been there for a very long time, because I've heard some of these complaints anyway about the bus system. And so in order for them to fix and come up with solutions, likewise, that's not going to happen overnight. So Premier Panton, do you know where we're at with any sort of solution to the current bus system?
Well, I can't provide a lot of information on that. I am aware that the minister has been, and to be honest, it's I want to call it a bit of a joint venture. We have been having discussions about doing electric buses in the country, and working out a new public bus or public transport system. Minister Bryan had gone to Barbados fairly recently to have a discussion with them, because they have obviously a public transport system, and I think they have electrified somewhere in the region of about 30% of their buses, and obviously they have a much bigger system than we do. A friend of mine who is the minister for health there in Barbados, he's the former minister for public transport there, and I had a discussion with him, and we're planning to have him come over to visit as well, so he can actually contribute and look at our system there and bring over the head of their public transport system there to see how best, if they have any recommendations to how best we could quickly resolve some of our issues and move forward. But as you said earlier, it's not going to happen overnight. We're trying to do a lot of different things at the same time, and then we're always, we've had all these other challenges along the way that have been distracting us with a variety of things. The good thing is that the country is not in a bad position from an economic growth perspective. I mean, the last rate of growth, the last GDP number we had was from September last year, which is about 1.7%. I can tell you, we don't have it official yet. I can tell you it is higher for the end of the year, and then we're waiting on the GDP numbers for the first quarter, which I expect to be higher yet again. But these are things that have to be put in context against what we're dealing with the rate of inflation, the increase in fuel costs, the increasing costs around the generation of electricity that people have to pay as well. So these are definitely challenging times. It requires a steady hand. It requires looking forward and trying to project and assess what we may be facing in the near future and the medium term future, and try to put ourselves in the best possible position to deal with those scenarios. But relatively speaking, the country is is doing better than, for example, the US have had a reduction in GDP for the last 2 quarters, which typically means for most countries, that would mean that they're in a recession. They use different other factors to assess whether they're officially in a recession or not.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we're still doing fairly well. We're, our um, our tourism numbers are looking like they're going to be pretty phenomenal as we move into the end of the year in the high season. I was given a statistic the other day that in 2019, American was averaging on a Saturday somewhere in the region of about 7 flights in the day,
Mm-hmm.
and they're projecting they're going to have 9 flights on Saturdays during the high season. So, I think it's a pretty strong indication that our tourism industry is coming back fairly strongly, and obviously our financial services industry continues to be strong. There's lots of other things going on as well, um, and I think, despite the efforts of some members of the opposition, trying to suggest that there is a lack of confidence in the country, the numbers, the revenue
Mm-hmm.
numbers, the growth in registration numbers for financial services, and the growth in tourism numbers um, completely counteracts any prediction or projection, the negative prediction or projection that they come up with.
All right. So, good evening. Amjad said the solution he has about electrical buses can't work in Cayman because we don't have the right roads for that. Good evening to Loretta. We've got
Good evening.
Sanya, who says, in all honesty, Minister Bryan can't fix that overnight. That is public transport, and it's just some of the drivers don't adhere to the rules. This is an ongoing thing for years. I know that some public transport inspectors try and are all over watching them. So we'll see. Damien, good evening. For some reason, Miss Romelia sent a question, but I'm not seeing her on the chat at all. But her question is, good evening, Mr. Panton. Can you say if government is still supporting Caymanian Land and Sea Corp 65,000 every 3 months? If yes, can you say why?
I do not know offhand. I don't know if that is the position. Because I haven't heard specifically, I suspect that the answer may be no, but I can't commit to that. I'd have to ask that question specifically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have good morning, First Lady Jayan. Andrea says, Mr. Premier, electric buses, in my opinion, will not work in the Cayman Islands. The transportation system, I agree, needs overhaul. But remember, these licenses are owned by Caymanians, and if replaced with, put them out of work. So I'm sure these are all considerations that the minister responsible for tourism and transport would have taken into consideration and
These
continues to take.
are just factors that you have to work out solutions to. I mean,
Right.
You've got to figure out a way to transition, and there's no I think certainty to any point that electric buses cannot work. They have wheels. We have good roads. Of course, they can work. But yes, I understand her point that there are specific factors that need to be taken into account, and we need to be able to work through how we transition and compensate people in and assist the transition to electric buses.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a bit of an unusual question this evening. Somebody wants to ask. They say, ask him about the views and any considerations towards legalizing abortion.
Well, obviously the U.S. has been going through some pretty interesting changes in the last 5 years. The recent decision by the Supreme Court there has been it's been quite a shock, I guess. I mean, it wasn't a shock, obviously, that a draft was leaked, so we sort of knew where they were going. But they've had, from the 1970s, they've had that as a constitutional right. Um, it's one of the polarizing issues. Um, and to be honest, it's a difficult issue. It's always a difficult issue. I support. I personally have um, strong feelings about supporting women's rights, but at the same time, I understand how difficult that is, both for the woman who has to make a decision like that, and for anybody who looks at it to try to work through the moral and legal issues of it. Um, I guess one of the things that concerns me most is that, and let's not deny it, we do have scenarios here where um, some of our young girls, for example, are impregnated as a result of rape, and even as a result of incest. And in those types of scenarios, I think they should have some kind of right. Um, they should have some kind of protection. Um, and it's usually exercised by traveling to the U.S. What I see happening in the U.S. now is that a number of states are voting to maintain the right, um, the freedom for women to have control over their bodies, and then we have other states that are doing the opposite. So it's going to be interesting to see how it comes out at the end of the day, but it seems like it'll be an issue for some time. The Law Reform Commission in Cayman has put a certain set of questions out as part of a report on a modernization of the what's it called again? Oh gosh, penal code. Because the penal code is what has the provision, the anti-abortion provision in it. So one of the things that they're asking about is whether we should have the right of abortion in Cayman, at least even in very limited circumstances, where it's because of rape, because of incest, where it's a threat to the mother's life, that type of thing. And I know that they've been getting public feedback. I think the public consultation period has closed, so they'll probably come back with a report in due time on that. But yeah, I mean, it's a question that I've had. It's a question that has, or an issue that has generated questions to me in the last month or so, and I know that there were some discussions in other media about this the morning after pill, and it's apparently easy availability in Cayman and that type of thing. I can't say that I know a lot about that other than what I've read, but it's a real issue. I mean, women do have. I think there is an expectation that they have some sort of control over their own bodies. So it's a conversation that we probably will have to have and see where we come out at the end of the day.
Okay, Sarah, yes, good evening to you. Debbie says abortion should be legal up to a certain trimester. Disagree with full term, that's murder. Well, I don't think anybody allows full term abortions, Debbie. So not even in America was that allowed. So yes, Sanya says yes. They still support them, Sandy. Why? I'm sure. And it says, why I'm not sure, but they are under new management. And trust me, we all wonder why, as the tour buses got no help, only the boats and their owners. It was a funding to help all land and sea members, but it was later only a chosen few from a certain area got help. Lots of us quit for a lot of bias treatment. Hope the new management will get it right. So I guess she's referring to the land and sea.
Right, the land co-op question. Yeah.
Amjad says, didn't what the gays did on Saturday was disrespectful to Caymanians and this Christian island? Amjad, I will answer that. I mean, the premier can certainly give his opinion, but in my opinion, I saw nothing. I wasn't there, but I saw video footage, which we shared on this program, and I saw nothing that was disrespectful. In fact, they were much more, respectful than what I see at all of the other Badabanews and other festivals that we have on this island. So I think if you were not there and you certainly did not see them just enjoying a concert and participating in a peaceful parade, basically, then I'm not sure that you can speak about what's disrespectful and what isn't.
Yeah.
Aliano?
I would think.
Aliana says, good evening, Mr. Premier. Can we get your position on the labor issue on islands, from wage exploitation, poor work compensation, the lack of enforcement or regulations for hours worked, but in general, what protection or changes are being made to the labor law? So is it still the situation that we have an employment or labor law that was amended but never actually enacted? Is that still floating around somewhere?
Well, I wouldn't say it's floating around. It's probably well and truly anchored down by other bits of paper now. But I think that was the case. Not this goes back multiple administrations. There was a labor law that was
because I think originally it was
never
done.
implemented, never commenced.
Exactly. I want to say it was done when Minister, Tar Rivers was in charge of labor, which was quite a number. That was her first.
It was before that.
It was even before that. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 12 years plus.
Yes. If my memory serves me correctly, there was one version of a proposed new labor law that I think it goes back about 3 or 4 administrations that was not commenced, was passed but not commenced. There was an attempt to do, I think in the first PPM administration in 13 and 17, there was an attempt to do modernization of the labor law at that time. I do not believe that ever actually went to Parliament. That was mired in a consultation process. So I don't think it actually made it to Parliament. It is something that we're going to try to try to address, but there are so many other things that we're trying to achieve at the same time, and there's only so much time and resources available at any given point in time. But I think we will probably after the next budget session try to address any significant aspects of the labor law. I mean, there are a number of provisions in that do need to be updated, and of course we have had a situation where we've had a minimum wage law in place, with the minimum wage fixed for probably 7 years now, and going on to 7 years, and it's been fixed at $6 an hour, which to my mind is having a very negative effect on wage growth. Of course, the part of the difficulty right now is when you have an environment of high inflation. It is arguably not the right time to be promoting wage increase, because that can contribute to further inflation. But there is a reality that if we don't, if people aren't paid what they need to be paid to live, then we have a society that is sliding backwards. So we're working on we have the committee, I think, going again, and we're expecting probably by the end of this year to have an updated report, and we'll see where it goes from there. I mean, I think the average sort of hourly wage now is probably considerably in excess of $6 an hour.
I was going to say, did the census give us any insight? I haven't had a chance to go through the census report, but I know that it's out now. Did it
Yeah,
give us any insight into how many people are actually at the minimum wage level and who those individuals are?
I think it does, but I can't remember specifically. To be honest, I haven't
Mhm.
had the opportunity to delve into it in a lot of detail yet. But it does deal with aspects of that. Um,
Yeah, it's a big document, so I need to spend some time with
yeah,
it
there's a
myself.
tremendous amount of very useful information
Yes.
for us there, and we need to, as I've said from the press conference last week, as the deputy premier said, it's you know eh, we should all be reading it. That there's lots of information that will help government plan appropriately, and that is something that it's not a bad word. It's a
Mhm.
necessary word. It's a necessary action. We need to be planning um, how our country moves forward, and not just um, you know turning the valves open and going for the ride, and hoping that we're going to have a good outcome.
Mhm.
If we don't plan, God knows what kind of outcome we're going to have. And we already see a number of instances where we've had negative impacts from the amount of growth that we've, or unconstrained and unguided and unplanned for growth that we've had.
Mhm. Andrea is inquiring about if the Pat government is looking at building at least two more high schools. Well, can we get the one high school finished? I must say that I drive by it every single day, and it is making some progress. I saw some parking lot paving and stuff. Even my daughter, she's only 5, but she said a couple days ago, she's like, "Oh, it's looking better," because we drive by it every
Yes,
single day. So she
yes,
said, "It looks better than yesterday, don't you think?" And I was like,
yes.
"Yeah." They were just working on the parking lot, so I think she got excited. But is
We're
that
making a
gonna
lot of
be
progress
ready?
there. But
Yeah.
I would not suggest that suddenly, certainly in this term, that there would be two more high schools. I'm not sure that we need two more, but what we do need is to get the John Gray High School completed, and I think we are on target to do that by the end of the year. I think it is, um, and then there are changes to be made to the existing SciFec facility, which is the old Cayman Islands High School, which is where I went
Mhm.
to high school, and many of my um, most people my age went to school there. So yeah, we're looking
And
at
is
getting the facilities finished, as opposed to what we're actually thinking about more in terms of is expanding some of the primary schools, providing better
Mhm.
facilities there during this, the balance of this term.
Right. And are we looking at trying to have better integration with the private schools and public schools, like maybe trying to see how we can fix the imbalance that exists that seems to cause other social issues as a result of that very stark separation?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean there are obvious concerns around that. I mean, when I went to school, I think one of the things that I can see um, as being a definite negative um, outcome is that if you have certain parts of the children from certain parts of the island all going to a high school, and there's no integration across the island, across the country. I mean, we can't do much about well, I suppose we could um, deliberately have a program of including some of the sister islands students. But certainly within Grand Cayman, when I was in high school, one of the great things was I ended up with lifelong friends from every part of the island, um,
Mhm.
and that was to my mind a very significant positive outcome of being able to go to school together in one place. Now, you know, it's not possible. We realize that, but we have to then find other ways to mitigate the negative aspects. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that's something that the minister is very much interested in and open to addressing.
Okay, so Miss Joy, good evening. She says that the labor law was under the Honorable Roy Bodden. Wow, was it that long ago? Oh my
I think
goodness.
that's correct. Yes.
Wow, that's a long time ago. Loretta says, any update on the building of the Theolin McCoy Primary Hall? Where's that one going? That's in
That's a
Bodden Town?
Bottown Primary School. Yeah, Taylor
Yeah.
McCoy Primary School. Um, I I don't have an update per se, but I do know it's on the minister's agenda, because she and I have both had conversations about that over the last 2 months, I think, in terms of a hall, the hall for the Thielen McCoy, as well as for the Joanna Clark Primary School, or the Savannah Primary School.
Mhm. All right, folks, we have about 10 minutes left in the program. Don't forget, Bobo listeners, if you have a question for the Premier, you can call the usual line, 936-2626 is that number. Anthony said, are there any set deadlines or findings from those committees, for example, the minimum wage one that you just spoke about?
No, not that I'm aware of. I think that they are going to do the preliminary work that they're seeking to get done, and then come back and indicate to caucus, or when the minister, caucus through the minister, let's say, when they're going to be in a position to give us some definitive indication as to whether, it may be that they want some further policy guidance, or it may be that they'll say, okay, we expect to be able to give you an answer in 3 months' time.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks. So get your questions in. Now is your opportunity. Amjad is suggesting $8 is minimum wage. I think, if you're going to raise the minimum wage, you need to not just pull a figure out of thin air. You need to come up with a reason why, Amjad. And that's why, we have policy analysts and so on that work within government to advise the elected officials on what their recommendations are based on a number of different factors, no doubt. Damien said, how about $8 per person for persons who don't get grants or tips, or at the discretion of the employer? Well, I think if you make it discretionary, you might as well not have it. But anyway, Aliano says a lot of these schools need to have some form of external funding from these big name businesses, and curriculum made match the niche work environment of the Cayman Islands, so school leavers aren't at home wasting time. Are we still subsidizing private schools, by the way? Do they still get some sort of subsidy from government? And
Yes.
if that is the case, why is it that there seems to be, and I hear this complaint all the time from parents, they'll be on a waiting list for 5 years and never hear a single word. So if government is subsidizing private schools, should there not be something that says 20% of your student body should be, Caymanians, or maybe you should take kids who might be a little bit underprivileged because you're getting that subsidy from government?
Yeah.
There's nothing to
But they
even
do that.
encourage.
They do that. They have, yes. We, I think historically, the private schools got about a $2 million a year, a financial period contribution, because it was recognized that if they didn't exist, then government would have the obligation to deal with it. So it's probably cheaper for government to contribute to them. And they do have scholarships available, partial and full scholarships, I think, available to students who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to attend. So that is part of the expectation, and I know that it does happen. I can't give you a specific percentage. Obviously, it may depend on the particular school. Not all schools are necessarily equal in that respect. Some are financially stronger than others. But yes, that does happen.
Okay.
I want to switch
Yes.
topics with you quickly. I was really interested to hear your show the other day in which you were discussing Emancipation Day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is a topic that that myself and some of my colleagues in my office have been discussing for, I don't know, probably about a month. Um, we noted that we celebrate things like Discovery Day, as
Mm-hmm.
if you know s- somebody wasn't around, or why would we celebrate Discovery Day when we have something much more important like Emancipation Day? I'm not saying we're going to replace it. I think the Bahamas actually replaced um, Discovery Day with National Heroes Day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but no matter what we do, I personally feel that Cayman has a very interesting and unique um, emancipation history. Um, the fact that uh, slavery was supposed to technically end in Cayman on the 1st of August, 1834. And it wasn't until 1835, I think it was in May 1835, 3rd of May, that the Governor Sligo had to um, send somebody here to say, hey, you've got to adhere to
Mm-hmm.
the abolition of slavery declaration. And then we also had the apprenticeship stuff that went on for a little while longer as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I personally think I find it fascinating. I think it's really an important part of our history that we should not, um, we should, our children should be aware of. We should not just ignore it and let it go. I personally believe, I think in earlier times we did have, I believe, an Emancipation Day holiday, and I think there's now a renewed interest. As I said, I was really surprised to hear the conversation on your show, and I think it really reflects a renewed interest in having Emancipation Day as a public holiday,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's a part of our history that we shouldn't ignore. It's a really important aspect. Um,
Yeah.
so
So
I'm
we may
I,
have it. We may
I
have it
am
come back then.
I'm very much interested in proposing that we do this to my colleagues, and
Mm-hmm.
we haven't had much of a discussion on it yet, but
Yes. Can I
um,
ask you a question, right? So, obviously, it's been gone since 1960, but despite that, there'd be nothing stopping, like the Pat government, for example, from even issuing a statement on Emancipation Day. And to the best of my knowledge, that wasn't even done. So, I think it's great that we might be thinking about bringing it back. But what would have
yeah,
stopped us this year, for example, from just
nothing.
having
It,
the press
it was
secretary send out a statement acknowledging it?
yeah, it was an oversight that it was not. It's because we have gone so long without actually celebrating it. Uh,
Mm,
and I do think, I feel very strongly that it is something that we've got to write the record on, and we can't ignore the past. We have to learn from the past,
mhm.
and you know make sure that we don't repeat errors in the way we treat humanity in the future.
Yes. And currently. So,
Yeah,
Premier
absolutely,
Panton, thank you
absolutely.
so much for joining the show. Amjad is asking for you to give some advice on how you keep looking younger and younger. I think he might be hitting you up for some favors after that compliment. Keep an
Well,
eye on Amjad. But anyway, folks, thank you guys so much for tuning in. The hour seems to go by so quickly in the evenings, but I know that everyone is busy, including the premier. He tends to stay back in the office to spend some time with us, and we don't want him working any longer than he has to. So he's going to get home so that hopefully he can get a nice balanced meal. And I've got dinner and a 5-year-old to make sure she's got to get in bed on time. So thank you, Premier Panton, as always, for joining the program. So just a reminder, folks, he's here every other Wednesday. So not next week, but the week after that, if all goes well and there's no scheduling conflicts, he'll be back with us.
okay, thank you, Sandra. I'm really glad that you sound so healthy yourself. Um, I'm happy that that Amjad thinks I look younger.
Yes.
I wish I felt younger every day. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's always a
Once
pleasure.
we start to take these pounds off, we'll get there.
Absolutely. And again, always a pleasure to be here. And I love, the fact that we can interact with your your listeners and those people who are watching, and they're from all over the world. So thank you very much again. Have a great evening. Take care, everybody.
All right, folks. That is none other than Wayne Panton, the Premier of the Cayman Islands. Thank you guys so much. Paul, Amjad, Dad was here tonight. Miss Joy, everybody who was tuned in. Thank you guys very, very much. Sanya and all others. Damien, thank you for tuning in. Do have yourselves a wonderful evening. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow morning at make sure you tune in, because remember, I got that footage for you tomorrow about the Cubans scaling the wall and leaving the detention center. So we're going to have a look at that and try to analyze what's going on there. And also a bit of a brief update on the coverage this morning we had of the situation with the canine dog, Baron, because I do have a few more details that we need to add to that story as well. So you guys have a wonderful evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m.
Time for Monday Rewind. The Cold Hard Truth's Monday Rewind show recaps the weekend's news and events so you don't miss a beat.
Don't miss out.
All the weekend's source, news, gossip, and well, it wouldn't be a weekend recap show without traffic accidents too. Cayman Marl Road is Cayman's #1 news source and has the island's hottest morning talk show.
It's the hottest.
Make sure you don't miss a beat with Monday Rewind.
Rewind.
Tune in every Monday from 7:30 a.m. on both YouTube and Facebook. The Cold Hard Truth now has your Premier access with Premier Panton.
Hello, everyone. This is Wayne Panton. Come and join me on Cayman Marl Road's Premier Access every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. for a frank and open Q&A session. I'm here to answer your questions about the issues that concern you the most. Tune in to YouTube and Facebook Live on Wednesday. We will see you there.
Full transparency, answering your questions, down to earth, accountable, and accessible to who matters. You. Don't miss Premier access on the Cold Hard Truth, spilling the tea like no one else.